Hello everyone. Oh, I see Maxine's there already. Hi Maxine. Oh, and Martine, nice to see you. And Mimi, Mel, hi. Right, we'll just give everyone a few minutes to join. Oh, and Jackie, Sue, Marilyn, this time from the Netherlands. And Carolyn, really nice to see so many of you. I did wonder Monday afternoon, sometimes people will be at work or whatever, but yay, nice. And Tina. Oh, Stephen from France, maybe? And Di. Hey, it's really nice to see. Oh, got a good crowd. Good crowd. Right, I'll just give a couple of minutes and give people a chance to join us here on Twilight. I've got builders working in my back garden, and I've got my kind of grown-up kids, 20 and 21 now, kind of giving everybody the be quiet warning, but we'll see. Oh, Sandra's here. Carla. Yes, I've given everyone the kind of be quiet warning, and hopefully we'll get a nice peaceful hour. We shall see. And I'm hoping, yesterday I did a live and the internet was an absolute mare. I had such difficulty. I'm hoping we're going to just like fingers crossed, everybody, that the internet is going to play kind today. Oh, and Karen's here. Really nice to see so many of you on a Monday afternoon, especially when it's sunny outside. Oh, and Cheryl. Hi, Cheryl. And Marjorie. Oh, it's lovely to see you all. Right, let's make a little start anyway. Of course, the video will stay in the group after the event. So those of you who are just popping in and then perhaps catching up later, you'll be able to find the video. I notice as well that somebody, possibly Debbie, had just shared the last live video I did, reshared it in the group. So, oh, here's Faye. Hi, Faye. And Katie. Wow, there's a lot of very familiar names here. Brilliant, really nice to see you. Well, first of all, hello and welcome everybody, whether you're joining us here live or perhaps catching up later on. I'd like to say a big thank you to Twilight, Crop and Craft, Faye and Debbie for inviting me and also supporting me in my stamp designs and so on in their shop. So thanks ever so much for asking me to be here this afternoon. It's an absolute pleasure. As I say, let's keep fingers crossed that the internet plays nice today. If anything does happen, if I suddenly disappear, it means it's cut me off again. I will try and come back, and if all else fails, we'll just rearrange. I can't get too stressed about it. Okay, we'll do our best. It certainly seems a little bit more stable today. So what I thought we would do today is we're going to make some bunting out of stamps. So here's some that I've already done. And I wanted to do a version of bunting which doesn't require a sewing machine, but I still like the look of lots of threads. So I'm kind of mixing up some threads in there, but let me just show you how this looks. So there's some I've done look with the little fairy town houses. And this is from my bunting bonanza, because you know everything needs a little bit of bunting. And this is with my littlest Martian, and I'll show you those stamp sets in a moment. Now once you've pieced these together as bits of bunting, you can stitch them if you want to, but you don't have to. Colouring things in when they're stuck down in a group like this is so much faster. So I generally do a whole load at once. This is just an old reel I picked up in a yarn show somewhere, wrap them around there. And I think things like that, it's great to use on, well, an art journal page, which I'm going to complete with you today. I also think, and there's a lot of scrapbookers in this group, I think they would be fantastic to run along your scrapbook pages, even greetings cards and things like that. So once you've made a few, you can wrap them up round a roll and you've got it there and it's good and it's ready to go. These are the stamp sets that I'm using. So I designed for Carabelle Studio. which is a stamp and rubber plate stencil manufacturer. They are based in the south of France, currently suffering with a massive heat wave, I think. And there's my Bunting Bonanza. And this is the Martian, but I'm using the smallest little Martian. And this is from a previous release that I did. This is Fairy Town. So those are the 3 stamp sets that I've used for the class today and for the samples. Now I'm just looking at my checklist to make sure I've remembered what I need to say. Yes, and I can see your comments, by the way, because I'm filming with my phone, but I'm looking at my iPad. There's a slight delay, but I can see comments coming up. If I miss any today, because I'm busy, if any questions, I can always go back and check in and answer them later. So feel free to ask any questions, and if I miss them, I will catch up. Yeah, somebody's saying, what a great idea for a scrapbook border. Yeah, I thought that as well. Once you've done these and you've got them ready, they're easy just to pull off and snip what you need, and I thought they would be nice on a scrapbook page. So I'll show you how I put those together, the kind of no-sew version. Now here's some things you might like to get ready if you are playing along today. I know quite a lot of you don't like to just watch and listen and then play later. I have got some of my images stamped and cut out ready. Now, I do these with a Brother Scan and Cut. I know there are a lot of you in this group with your cutting machines, be it scrapbookers and so on, and the cut files that Twilight produce. So I know a lot of you will be very familiar with cutting machines. As I say, I've got a Brother Scan and Cut, and I think I can only do one function out of about 1,000 on it. I know how to cut my stamp designs out, and it's incredibly useful for cutting out. I've got a 1mm border on mine, and it's really useful. If not, you've just got to get jiggy with it with the scissors. Now I'm using my stamps. Of course, many stamps would lend themselves to this, just a repeating design along, and all I've got here is a strip of card, standard white card, and I've cut it into a very narrow strip. That's what we're going to put the bunting onto. So any card for that, any card at all. So you just need a strip of card. I'm going to use some thread. Now this is optional. Some of you I know will be very neat and clean scrapbookers. I am quite a messy mixed media artist. I like lots of threads, lots of messy layers. So I'm going to use this thread, not to sew with, but just to kind of add texture to it. I'm going to colour my designs with standard watercolours. If you haven't got watercolours, I know some of you like your pens, so I'll show you how you can do that with something like Echolina or Ecoline. These are water-soluble, water-based pens. So it doesn't really matter what you use to colour, that is up to you. I'm going to show you my very loose and quick, slap it on and hope for the best method, because I'm not particularly patient with colouring in. So I do a really kind of fast way. Then other things that we're going to use to shade, I'm using a Stabilo pencil or any dark pencil for adding extra depth of shade. And I like to add extra little white marks as well, highlights with a white pen. So I'm using a Posca. Optional will be glitter. Now this takes like forever to dry, so I may not even add that today, but I would add something like a Stickles the Clear. There's a diamond, there's, I think it's called Starburst, there's unicorn, there's various kind of clear ones. I just use those as a top layer. So other things though, if you're going to play along and do the journal page as well, we're going to do a very quick bit of mark making on a scrap of ledger or text. Some of you that did my live yesterday will already have some of that to use. And then I'm going to use some acrylic paints. So I've got my Dina Wakeley's, but any acrylic paints just to do, we're going to do a really quick background. Most of it doesn't show, so we're not going to get too, kind of caught up on that background. What else do we need? I'm going to use some black ink. If you haven't got black ink, you can just water down some black paint to use as well for a little bit of mark making. I've got a couple of texture stamps. Now, anything for that. This is Carabelle Studio one as well. This is a little hand-carved one. Doesn't matter, anything to add just a little bit of extra texture on the background. And then I'm going to use, I tend to use archival ink pads, but whatever you have really. And I use that on top of acrylic paint. Now, what else have I got here? I've just grabbed a couple of scraps of, this is my old gel prints, something like that, or scrapbook paper. So when I do this bunting one, to save colouring it in, I just stamp it onto something like this and cut it out, or your scrapbook paper if you've got that. And let me just check my tick list, what we have. I think that's it. I've got one little quote here I'm going to add to my page, and that's one of the new Dina Wakley for Ranger, the ledger quotes, but you could type something, you might have one that you could stamp out, whatever works for you. So I think that is it for now. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to turn the camera so that you can see directly what I'm doing on my work mat. So have a couple of minutes to go and get all of your kind of supplies and things ready while I kind of turn around the camera and fiddle about. I want to make sure you've got a really good view. So if you go and grab your supplies, I'll turn the camera and then we will make a start. Okay, now then, I think that's looking like a pretty good view there. So now we've got the camera with a slightly closer view. Here's that original journal page that I shared for today's class. So this is what the bunting looks like before it's coloured, and then I've just added it as a little strip across there. And here's a couple of the other ones. Look, there's the little fairy town. And there's the bunting. And I generally then just wrap those around this old vintage kind of, don't know what would have been on there. And there, you could even do it around a loo roll, couldn't you? And then that's just ready for me to use whenever I want it. Now, the first thing I want to do, just so that I can leave this to dry, I'm just going to do a little bit of mark making on, this is a piece of old ledger. You could do it on anything really, dictionary page, old book page. I use this to tear up and add to my backgrounds. So it's just a really simple scribble on a bit of old paper, and then I can leave it to dry and then use it as part of my page. Now I'm using this ink. This ink is not permanent though, so you could use like a permanent fountain pen ink or water down some black paint. Now I'm using a bamboo dip pen here, but you could just even do that with the wrong end of a paintbrush. And that's all I'm going to do there, because I only want that one little strip to go along the bottom of the page. It needs a bit of time to dry, and that's why I'm doing it first. But you can see, this is what I did in another live yesterday. Just a really simple marks. There's nothing complicated there. Little lines, circles, little crosses, but those kind of bits are really useful to tear up and use as collage. So I'm putting that to one side to dry. Let's look at the bunting. Now, if you are really kind of proficient at using a sewing machine, then you don't necessarily need to stick it to this piece of card here. You can literally just feed it under the foot of the machine and it will stitch things together. But for most of us, it's easier to stick it onto something like this. Now here's the bunting. Now I like the bunting shapes because they're easy to cut out. So you can, and I'm just going to grab my stamp set here. So I got some scraps. I keep every little scrap of if I've been gel plate printing, because all of these scraps are useful. They will all get used. Or, as I said, you can use your scrapbook papers, because I know you're all hoarding them. Please excuse the state of my ink pads. I am naturally messy. Now, doing it this way means then you don't have to colour anything in. And for this, it doesn't matter. I wouldn't necessarily want to do the little Martian, because then she would end up with like a purple face or something. But for this, it means I've already got coloured bunting. And just to pull out that design, I'm not going to cut them all out because you know what that looks like. To pull out the design, I would then use something like the white Posca. Oh, hang on, let me give that a shake. You can just pull out that design a little bit. So I'm just going to put a few of these little bunting bits on here to show you how I do that. Now, I'm kind of cheating today and using some Yoo-hoo glue because it's just fast drying and it's good on camera, but it's not scrapbook safe because it's not acid free, just so you know. I'm sure you've all got the proper scrapbook safe glues to use. So I've put some glue onto that strip, and then I can just kind of piece this together. I'm going to do something slightly different with the Martians in a minute. So this is just to show you how you can mix it up there, different designs, random colours. and so on. And that will be ready to add to your project pages. Right, I'm just moving the bunting bits out of the way. Because I'm from Yorkshire, we do call it bunting. It's like recently I had COVID, but in Yorkshire we don't have COVID, we have COVID. I love regional accents and dialects. Now, here, look, is the Martian bunting. This time, as I say, I don't want to stamp the Martian onto patterned paper because we'll lose the features, we'll lose the whole kind of face. I'll just show you here as well, I've got some of the fairy town. And there are different houses in that set actually. You could put it all together with different ones, like as a kind of different village. Also, you can, I'll just show you this, I'm not going to actually stick it down, but you could vary the heights. So it doesn't always have to be a really kind of rigid straight line. You can kind of vary things a little bit. And that's, let me just show you that set. That is Fairy Town. Now with these little Martians, before I, sticking that to the last bit of glue, before I stick these down, I'm going to put some thread down. Now you don't have to do that. If you like the really kind of neat, clean and tidy look, then you don't need to put these threads down. I like the threads. I've done that on this one, and then on this one I have also run it through the sewing machine and just done a row across the top as well. Now that's completely optional, whether or not you want to do that. Not everybody has a sewing machine. I know sewing just freaks some people out altogether. So this is just like standard sewing thread. And now what I'm going to do is put some, again I'm cheating with the glue. So if you're doing this for scrapbooking, use your proper acid-free archival glue. And then with the thread, all I'm going to do is loosely pile it on, let the glue just catch it. And then I'm going to put these little Martians on the top, and they will just kind of sandwich that. They will sandwich that thread and just kind of hold it all together. As you can see how that works, it's caught those threads in there, and then when I stick that finally to my page, so I'll give you a closer view there, look, you get all of these threads, but it's just kind of nicely caught with those little figures on top. So let me just finish sticking a few of these down, and then we're going to do some colouring. Now, as I said, I'm naturally messy, and I'm already kind of gluing my hands to everything. No surprises there. Okay, Mariline's asking if I'm using my junk journal. Yes, I am, but I think actually you could do this on anything. I flipped between journals, as you know, so yes, I am using my junk journal today. Okay, now obviously that needs to dry a little bit, but there we have it, look, and it's on that piece of card, so it's quite nice and sturdy, and then also easy to attach to your journals or your scrapbook pages, because you can just put glue down that central piece and use it on the page. Now, the other thing, I think the bonus of putting things together on one strip like this, it's much easier and quicker to colour things when you've got them all in a line like this. So in a moment I'm going to colour down there with my watercolours. Just going to move a few of these bits out the way. Now those of you who've seen me colouring before will know that I don't go in for very neat colours at all. I'm going to really just slap a bit of colour on. The advantage of doing these in a row is you start with a colour on the first one and take it, repeat it all down the row. That's if you want them all the same. You could do them all slightly different. One thing I did on my original one, which I think this is kind of fun, I've done them all, if you notice, the same. The bodies, they've all got the kind of blue in the same space, but then I just did the hair different colours. So it kind of made them a little bit individual. So I'm using standard watercolours. As I say, you can use something like your Ecoline brushes, brush pens, or whatever you have really. Anything water soluble. I'm really fond of using watercolours, well, for lots of reasons. I like the way you can build up colours. I like the way the colours bleed into each other, but also they are fast and easy to use. I've got two brushes that I use. Although I've lost one. Hang on, I'm just looking. Ah, here it is. So I use this one kind of slightly flatter brush and then a little neat brush as well for detail. And what I'm going to do the faces in a neutral grey. Sometimes I think you can have too much colour. Things can get a little bit busy. So I'm using, can you see, this very watery grey. And all I'm going to do to start with is just go around the edge of each face. And if you want to just blend it in so you don't get too much of a solid line, you can just go over that with a wet brush just to blend those edges in. I don't worry too much because as it dries, those lines do sort of disappear a bit. If you deliberately go for this kind of loose, scruffy, messy look, well, it can't really be wrong. Okay, you can see how fast this is. 5, 6, 7. I know that I need 7 Martians for my page, so I'm not going to do them all. Okay, just adding a little bit more grey there. Now I'm picking out some pinks here for the cheeks, because they're giving now that very grey complexion. We'll just give it those little kind of comedy cheeks. Now you see what I mean? Once you've got colour on your brush, you can just whiz down the whole line. And this is the sort of thing I think you can sit and colour in front of the TV, take it on holiday to do, and then you've got them ready just to pull off your reel and use when you want them. So I've started with a really light pink for the cheeks there, and I've just mixed up this slightly darker there. I find watercolours work much better if you layer them. See how I'm just adding a dab of that darker pink. Right, I'm switching to my flat brush now because I want to just do some really loose colour on these bodies. So what should we start with? I might start with an orange. See, I've just got a bit of kitchen roll here, and if I've got too much on the brush, as I did then, I'm just going to blot it off. Now see how I'm being really quite loose and casual with that colour. See, it's fast. Whiz along the line, do them all. I'm going to add a bit of pink to that. Now, watercolours generally go lighter as they dry. So where I've got this orange, which is going to go quite light, I might just build some darker red. It's kind of pinky red on top of that. And if you want those colours to blend and move a bit more, just go back over it with a bit of water. Give it a helping hand. Now, when watercolours are wet, if you put wet against wet, the colours will bleed into each other, they will blend, which is a really nice effect. If you want to add a third colour, so I might add to this some blue, this is pretty much dry now. So it's not going to bleed into that, it's just going to sit next to it. If it bleeds into it, the danger is you might create a bit of muddy brown colour. But once it's dry, now you can just build that colour in next to it. And you can just keep adding colours to that as you want to. Again with that blue, because I know that's going to dry much lighter, I'm just going to pick out a darker blue. Let's see, what's that one? Yeah, that'll do. I'm just putting a bit of darker blue on there to make sure that it gives it a little bit of, otherwise it just might dry a little bit too light. And then it's up to you. I've got a gap down here. I could, let's see, I could have a bit of green. So there you go, nice and quick. Look, a whole strip of Martians coloured in, just like that. So with the hair, I've already got colour on the palette. I have one with green hair. Don't feel you have to colour every little bit. See, you can leave little patches of white. Looking for some of that nice bright pink. Let's have a bit of that. So there we have it. That's my real kind of slapdash colouring method. And that, you could do that, couldn't you, like on holiday, sitting out, deck chair, glass of wine, watching a sunset, bit of colouring in, perfect. Now, what I also like to do though, and I think this makes a big difference, is to add a bit of depth of shading with a dark pencil and also maybe a white pen. If you are using brush markers, by the way, let me just show you how I would do that. Just grabbing one out the pack with a brush marker. To get that same kind of watercolour effect, I wouldn't colour straight onto the image. What I would do is colour onto a mat, and then use it like that as watercolour. So you can do that with any of your water markers. You couldn't do that, say, with something like Copics, because alcohol markers behave differently. You see how, if you're using markers and not standard watercolours, you really can do the same kind of thing. Okay. Now, ideally, the shading I like to do when it's properly dry. It's really a little bit wet, but it's okay. You get the idea. Now, I like Stabilos because they are really, really dark. Also, things like the Palomino Blackwing, they do a very nice dark, or just a really soft B pencil. And I'm just going in, say, under the chin there to give it that added depth there. Maybe just a little bit around the hairline. So again, I'm still being really quite casual with that. And anywhere you think it could do with a little bit of shading, quite often on my stamp designs, I put little dots to indicate the shading. So you can use that to help. See, there's little dots in these corners, so you could just build in a little bit more. Oh, I see, Franca's just joined us. Ciao, Franca. Okay, now I think that little bit of shading makes all the difference. And I do that on all of my designs, whatever I'm colouring in. I think that makes a really big difference. At any point now, you can, just going to pick up a little bit of red here. I can see now already as mine's drying, it's losing a bit of that brightness, so you can just add a bit more. Sometimes I just can't help myself fiddling. Okay, so that is a super quick way of colouring, especially when it's already fastened down. When it's stuck to that strip, it makes it so much easier to just whiz along with your colours. Now, also the white pen, it might still be a little bit wet for this, but I'll just show you what I would do. It probably needs to dry a little bit more. I just like to add those details. And sometimes as well, just in the middle of the cheeks, just because it looks cute. Okay. There you can see a couple of ways of putting together the bunting. When it's on the card, it's nice and sturdy and it's easy then to glue down on your scrapbook pages or your cards or your journal pages or whatever you want to do. Now I'm going to move on to my journal page. Okay, so Marilyn already asked, am I working in my junk journal? Yes, I am for this, although you could do this absolutely on any journal page, or you may be choosing to save yours for your scrapbook pages. Now, this is my junk journal. It's completely loose leaf. It has one ribbon around the middle, just tying everything in. So I tend to just work loose leaf and then tuck it in afterwards. I'm going to work on this page because randomly I put some craft pages and some white pages in my journal. Just a bit of everything is in there really. So I have put gesso on here already. Not everybody uses gesso. I generally do. I find that paint is much easier painting on gesso basically. And my little figures are going to go across here. And let's see if this is dry. Yeah, that's looking good. I'm going to chop that off now. So I'm going to use that little bit of ledger. And those little figures will sit across there. In fact, I'm just going to chop that one off. Now I've got a choice here with mine. I can either fold her in half so that she sits inside the fold of that page. On this one, I was a bit cruel. I actually chopped her in half. That's a choice. I might just fold this one. And then she'll just fold with the page. So now I'm going to switch to acrylic paints. I'm going to put a really quick background on here. And then it's up to you. If you're more of a scrapbooker, you might like to save yours for your scrapbook page. So I'm using a standard Amsterdam. This is a white acrylic. And I have a very, very similar scruffy approach to painting in acrylics as well as watercolours. I'm using my Dina Wakley, so this is a little bit of rouge. You can use anything that you have. You know, the colours are similar across all the ranges. And that's a little bit of ruby, that's a bit of a stronger red. I might bring in a little bit of cheddar. Whoops, that was nearly a disaster. And what I'm actually doing here, which you might recognise, is picking out colours that I've also got on the little Martian figures. So I used these kind of pinks, reds and oranges with a touch of blue. I've got pinks, red and orange, and I've got a little bit of blue. Just that way I know that's all going to sit comfortably together. I'm going to use this flat brush. And usually the way I start painting a background, and some of you will be really familiar with this, I think, is to put white on and build some colour in. And that way you don't get such flat patches of colour. See how that's already blending like that? And also I avoid water really when I'm painting, so I'm just going to wipe that off. Now I know that my little collage piece is going on the bottom, so I don't need to paint right down to the bottom. So that's just first layers. Now, if I want to build up this colour a little bit stronger, once it's started to dry a little bit, I can build a bit more of the pink in. If you keep working it when it's wet, it just keeps blending and it all just becomes one very flat colour. But by adding it on top, you can build up those darker patches. Now, if it goes too patchy, let's get a bit more of your white, kind of work it in. Now, I don't mind brush strokes, I like them. I don't like things too flat and too blended, so I'm quite happy just to have those brush strokes over the blue. This is still the same original colour. I'm just putting more colour on top, more of the same. And again, if it goes a bit too patchy, a bit of white. Just blend it in. So where this pink, I've added pink on top of pink. I've got a fairly strong pink there now, but just going to switch to a slightly smaller brush. And now with the ruby, this is a stronger red, so just taking it a step darker. Just a little bit. And the same with the blue. So I'm taking it, this is now a slightly darker blue. I started with the, no, that's a turquoise, I think. Yeah, that's turquoise, and now I'm adding peacock. So I'm just taking it a step darker. And then I can keep some of that kind of daylight in there. I don't need to cover every inch of it. Actually, I pulled out some cheddar there. I might build a bit of that in. Yeah, like that. And then that way, I've got all the same colours there. Now what? I think it's still a bit wet, but I think it will be okay to do a little bit of stamping. Any kind of texture. So I'm going to put red on red. Here is a sort of a similar blue. So my cleaning method is to wipe it on my hand. Told you I was messy. And now with the blue, just building a little bit of texture as well. Now at this point, I usually then just kind of lay things down. It just gives you a better picture of what's going on in the whole page. I'm going to put some finger dots up in this corner. Now some paints are toxic. If you're using something like Goldens, you just got to be careful with the pigment and things like that. Some of them are quite toxic. Craft paints are generally okay. So I'm just putting something in the corner here to kind of balance out these images. And if I can find it, here we are. This is one of my favourite little hand-carved stamps. I've had it for years, and sometimes it goes missing for months. And every time it turns up again. It's just a really simple little cross. Now I'm switching to a black ink. I want something a bit stronger now to balance this black that I've got down here. You can see how I often do things in groups. Groups of dots, groups of stamping. So I'm going to put a few top layers on here. I'm going to go back to my ink and some mark making. So I'm going to build up some marks on the top. And probably my white pen. It's possibly a bit wet really for the white pen, but just to, I'm just picking it up, just to give you the idea of what I would do. sometimes I do just literally this kind of loose wandering line. Yeah, just a little bit wet, but there we are. Look, little doodles, or you can go around shapes if you've already done them. So I would do a little bit of white on there. I would do a bit more, but my paint is just still a little bit wet. The other thing you can do is something like a Posca. If you give it a sharp flick, you can get quite a nice row of splats. Let's try it and see. Now, Stephen says it with the internet playing up, but from my point of view, Stephen, it's all right today. But who knows? The gremlins were out in force yesterday. Quite often, by the way, if it's stuttering a bit now as it's filming, if you go to the replay, quite often the replay is okay. So there, I've added some. You see little tiny white splats, and it's just by flicking my pen. Now the ink, this is when things could get potentially a bit catastrophic. I'll try not to spill the ink. Yeah, Katie says it's much better today. You know, the internet, this is one of the problems of doing the lives. The internet, you don't have a lot of control over it. I've insisted that everybody in my house turns everything off. And they've been pretty good about that, to be fair. Now, you've got to be quite brave going in with these kind of marks. Just flick a few bits as well. And now all I need to do is, I'm going to cheat again. I'm going to cheat with the naughty glue. Don't do this. And then all I'm going to do with these little figures, I'm just going to put it on the card. I don't need to glue all of them down. That piece of card on the back is going to anchor it anyway. So I don't need to put glue and cover all of the figures. I'm just going to leave that for a moment because it goes more tacky as it starts to dry. And then I've got my little quote here. And again with the naughty glue, tut tut. Some of you are asking about or commenting on stamp carving. I've done loads of it in the past, and I used a speedball. Speedball, it's a bit like lino cutting, but nowhere near as dangerous. You don't tend to gouge your fingers as much. It cuts through. You get a little carving tool, and it cuts through the speedball, the rubber. It just, honestly, it's like cutting through butter. It's really easy. Okay, and there we have it. So I've done circles up here to balance the circles, but the bold sort of black down here. Indian inks on acrylic. Right, Stephen's asking a question. I am using today, this is a calligraphy ink, but what I do often use as well, let me just grab it. something like this, which is a drawing ink or a fountain pen ink, because this one is permanent. So when this one dries, it won't run. When the calligraphy ink, which I like because it's a really, really good bold black, it does, it will run if it gets wet. And that makes it slightly dangerous. But either of those will work fine. And just to finish off now, because I don't need to handle this anymore. So with the stickles, I don't think you need too much, but sometimes we just like a little bit of bling. And have glittery hearts. And then because the hair is a scribble, very much like my own hair, I can just scribble a bit in there. Okay. Lynn is asking what glue are you using? I'm using a glue that I would not recommend. I'm cheating really because this is a really fast drying, so it's really it's good to use on camera, but I wouldn't recommend it because it is not acid free, and if you're scrapbooking and things, you want it to remain obviously a little bit longer. What I would normally use if I had a bit more time is something like a matte medium, a gel medium, or a proper craft glue that's designed to work with papers, because this eventually will kind of eat through the papers. Okay, right, I think we are done. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining, playing along. It would be really, really interesting if you've played along today, or perhaps catch up later. Maybe share pictures in the comments. What I will do, I'll take a picture of this exact one as I've done it today, so that you can see exactly what I did in the class. And you know, just one more thing, I just thought, I'm going back to my little carved one. I missed a bit on here, just to tie this page in. Add a little bit on there too. So thanks again. Thanks so much to Faye and Debbie. Thank you all at Twilight Crop and Craft for asking me along. Enjoy the rest of your week. You've got all sorts of activities and challenges lined up there. Now, as long as I press the right button at the end, fingers crossed, this will remain in the group so you can revisit later or catch up later. Thanks so much, everybody. Thank you for playing along. Bye.